Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy, the HipHopLobbyist. And today, I don't really do a lot of in real life, but I'm going to be reviewing some voter data from L2 voter mapping. Now, if you paid attention to our series, you've been paying attention to the channel the past few weeks, you know that I've been doing some breakdowns of voter trends throughout the country, but focusing on Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and the state of Florida. Really from an aspect of that Eastern Seaboard where you'll have more conservative, more popular state that used to be purple, used to be a blue state back in the 90s, but the 90s almost 50, 60 years ago, it seems like. And North Carolina, which has become more purple, and Georgia, which has become more purple because voter trends, people grow, people become Democrats, they become Republicans, they decide that they want to live in a certain state, and that state's political dynamic changes. So we really focus on that. But the thing that really got my, I would say, blood boiling was a narrative around Black men not voting or Black men voting for Donald Trump or against Kamala Harris. And I think that the narrative around this election has kind of skewed things because nobody expected both of these candidates to be the candidate, I would say. People expected Joe Biden, they expected Trump, but after that first debate, we kind of saw where it was. And that was one thing, but we changed the narrative. We have Kamala Harris, a chance for a Black woman to be president for the first time in American history. And it's become another race about race. And I guess that narrative of, well, sisters finally got in, and we had Barack. Give her a chance. She's the most qualified person. We've seen what Trump has done to Black people. We've seen the coronavirus checks. We've seen these different things. But the main narrative has been like, we're not going to support the sister. And I think that a lot of brothers with different podcasts and different narratives and different platforms have said, you know what? This is what it is. So they went out and got the surrogates, the Jamal Bryants of the world, Pastor Jamal Bryants, the former President Barack Obama, Roland Martin, other celebrities who honestly have an opinion about politics now, but they're not politically involved when things actually pop off. And I don't mean like, oh, they're not saying anything when it's popular, when a new law gets passed, but they're not actually showing up outside of a pep rally or a press conference to talk about the issue. That could be Attorney Ben Crump. That could be Al Sharpton. That could be anybody who's like, hey, I'm going to talk about this injustice, but what I haven't done is say, you know what? Let's actually go change the law. I don't want to just sue you and sue the insurance company and go through the litigation process that makes it more popular to talk about issues. I just want to talk about it, get the headline, say I'm fighting for you, and I'm going to have a Black male summit to talk about it. And guess what? I'm going to be a Democratic or Republican surrogate and show up at your barbershop at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday and say, hey, I need you to go vote. But shit, if you cared, you show up on a Friday or Saturday at maybe that same time, 2 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever, to hear what people say, or even 10 o'clock that Saturday morning, right? But because there's that disconnect, all of a sudden it's like, hey, Black men, you're voting for Trump because of coronavirus checks and the pandemic, and you're voting against Kamala Harris as Black woman, but it's like, bro, you don't care about what the fuck we do anyway, right? Because Black men at the bottom of this historical plight of America have been at the bottom of the totem pole. So as we kind of get into that, we say, all right, cool. Does your narrative match the voting data? And that's what we're here to do. So again, if you paid attention to the channel on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. But more than anything, we're tapping into the data because I think the data is more important than the narrative. So what I'm going to do here is flip over to, hold up, that's the wrong screen. Got too many windows open. No, it's not that one either. Wait a minute. Is this the one? Yeah, that's the one. Let's flip into state of North Carolina. And we're looking at voter data in North Carolina, swing state. I think that depending on the makeup of Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, however those end up going, I feel North Carolina is going to be one of the most important states in play. So I'm going to start there. And we're going to look at voting history, people who have voted as of November 1st, 2024, and today's date is November 1st, 2024. So looking at, the early voting data, we can see that when the numbers load up, at least, we'll be able to see. We'll see that 52% of North Carolina voters out of roughly 7.1 million voters, 3.7 million have actually cast a ballot. That's 52% of the population. So let's see what those individual demographics are by political party. And yesterday when I pulled up these numbers, it was interesting because regardless of what side of the fence you are, I'm trying to be nonpartisan here. You can see that in the state of North Carolina, the MPAs, wait, is that registered? I looked at people who actually, I haven't looked at people who voted, excuse me. Caught myself there. Out of those 7 million, 3.7 who've actually voted. Let me refresh this based on some kind of turnout aspect. And Republicans have 1.268 million people. MPAs 1.243. And Democrats 1.221. That means that by the numbers you can see here, Republicans hold a slight advantage over MPAs, and they hold a 40,000 vote advantage over Democrats. And even if you round up these other parties, Libertarian, Green, We the People, Constitutional, whatever people want to group themselves as outside the two main parties, you'll have a good block of MPAs who've cast a ballot and are really competing for determining what happens in this state across the country. Now, I know there's been some conversation around the governor's race there, along with the presidential race. I haven't had the chance to look at all the issues on the ballot across the state, because then you'll get into county initiatives, referendums, half-penny sales tax, all these different things. And that really is too minute or micro into the research. But at least for here, we see that Republicans are voting. But let's look at gender. Break it down by gender, 55% female, 44% male turnout. By ethnicity, looking at broad groupings, because we can look at individual groupings, but that's going to be too tedious as well. But we see that 18% of those voters that have cast a ballot are African American or likely African American or likely Black. European, 66%, unknowns, Hispanic, East Asian. And I've done this in other video, but I don't think I posted it outside the long form, is breaking down some of these other groups. And you can see that the unknowns or other groups that they have categorized be anywhere from Native Americans, Arabs, Russians, Armenians, Persians, Serbians, Ukrainians. So as you get into that, let's say, and not to get too micro, let's look at Arab voters by party breakdown. 21% Republican, 47% MPA, 30% Democrat in the state of North Carolina. So you're getting a good, at least, mix of what you could break down. But the issue for likely African American is not for this video, not for this stream at least, but do I have it here? You end up having these people that are likely modeled African American. And that could mean that they just have lived in a community with predominantly African American people, or they're multicultural or whatever, or they're self-reported. But then there's also a fact of the next census should actually break this down into the same breakdown of Chinese, Bulgarian, Indian, Arab, Czech, Indonesian, Armenian, whatever, to say, okay, if you're from Nigeria, South Africa, Jamaica, Haiti, another country, that we can actually break you down even further. So that'll be part of future data. But for today, we're looking at voter trends among Black men, the 37% of voters who have already come out. Now, again, if you've seen another video, you know that Black men typically vote around 37%. If you're basing it off the last 4 presidential elections, they typically come out around 37%. So we have 261,000 voters who have cast a ballot. And what do we have here? 75% being Democrat, 21% MPA, 6,000, roughly less than 7,000 brothers in the state of North Carolina have voted Republican. And I already know this is going to be something among Republican men. This breaks the mold. Republican Black men, again, still breaking the mold here. When you compare them to like their gender counterparts, females, you'll have them voting higher, even though it's a lower percentage, 7,000 brothers in North Carolina, like 10,000 brothers in Florida. They're voting higher than women. And not just black women, but every other like breakdown. And it's like, you know what? If you're voting that high as brothers, there's not even the liberal conservative battle piece. But you brothers understand voting a lot stronger than the other half of the population. But the data is updating. So let's update what we're talking about as well. So let's look at overall turnout. Actually, let me go back. Got to have black men if we're focusing on, right? Because the narrative is black men are voting for either Trump or against Kamala Harris. And some of the polls I've seen said that maybe 74% of black men may vote for Kamala, right? Still some undecided, maybe 15%. And then there's the rest that are there. So I think those rest are those all Republicans here, right? But really of those MPAs, those 50,000 brothers here, my question would really be, do you really feel 30% of them are going to deflect? And even if the 30% of them did deflect and say, you know what, hey, and you get maybe 20,000 votes out of these Democrats, right? You're not even scraping the MPA turnout, technically, right? You're not even scraping, like, it's 100,000 still Democrats who are voting for us. So that narrative, to me, is never matched with actual numbers. And this is just one state, right? But looking at turnout, actually among these brothers, by age, we know that among all these brothers, roughly 55%, as we see, are over the age of 55, right? These older brothers get it. Now, I've said it before, they probably know more and have seen more for voting rights, right? So they see things a lot different from the current generation, to where you can see a lot of them end up being Democrats, is older bloc, 13%, 14% MPA, 2% Republicans. And this tells me consistently, these brothers from the civil rights era, the same brothers from the Reconstruction era, the same brothers on the plantation, there's a split. I don't know, because these are the same Republicans from like the Frederick Douglass Republicans, right? I don't know if these were the brothers that wanted to stay on the plantation or run away, right? Because there are a lot of brothers that wanted to stay on the plantation. And I don't know, like, what side of the fence. Maybe they switched parties. Maybe they switched identities, right? But there's always been a small percentage of brothers who just don't go with the grain of the others. And some of them we've seen, from the P. Diddy's of the world to the Lil Durks to whatever. Maybe that's a bad analogy. That was, but F it. We've seen these characters throughout time who just don't go with the grain. And not even the MPAs, but the Republican brothers, because that's been the main two-party dynamics. But there is a conversation to say, okay, of these MPA brothers, let's look at all the MPAs by ages. Why haven't these brothers, these 56,000 that have already voted in North Carolina, why haven't they chose a party? Like, what do they believe and what don't they trust with both parties? They said, you know what, I'm going to vote, but I'm not buying the rest of this nonsense. And I hate to say it, but it's still going to be that 2%, 3%, whatever, of those 55 voters that you just, like, you're never going to understand why or how they vote. They're reckless, right? But it's beautiful because they actually cast a ballot, and you got to count and support the 37% of brothers who've actually counted and cast a ballot in the state of North Carolina. So I know it's going to be key, but I don't think that the narrative of black men voting for either side, I think it's over. Like, it's bullshit, to be honest, to be frank. It's just too much. And the reality of it is, brothers vote how they vote. They're voting more than they did in the early 2000s. They're voting more since Obama. So they've been inspired to be there and see, you know, their people on the ballot box, or their skin color on the ballot box, or in that position. But they also don't believe in the system. And when you're not talking to, I keep messing up here. When you're not talking to people about their current issues, that's when you have a disconnect. So of those 55 and 65, you end up saying, okay, cool. These brothers served in the military. They had jobs. They're downsized homes. They're living, their golden years, right? You're going to preach Medicaid and Social Security to them because that's what that's what they know. However, for these young Castanet brothers in here, these young Drewskis, these young college-educated brothers who are likely African-American, right, who have voted, these 56,000, what has been your message to them that hasn't translated to everybody else, right? Because of 56,000 voters who cast a ballot here, you have 209,000 still left to go vote. So you have 20%, right? And if you look at women, let's see how much the ladies have left to go get. They're roughly 30, right? So that was a 30 comparison to 51,000. Let me go back. 56,000, 21%, down 8 points, right? Had to go back again to look. Yeah, to 96. So they're almost at 100,000. So they're voting damn near 2-1 in some aspect to men. And they still have 230,000 votes to go get. But I feel that this number may get to at least maybe 180 through election day, right? We still have 4 days before election day. So this is again, if you just tapped into the stream or the recording, November 1st. Damn, I've got a call coming in. It's not going to be a long stream. Either way, these ladies have something to vote for, right? Whether it's what they've attained through education, generational wealth, just believing in stuff. I honestly feel that because a lot of sisters read more, maybe that's what it is. They're involved professionally. They're seeing themselves there. But there needs to be something that's not as divisive to get men to vote. And out of the 37%, the 56,000 brothers who done it, guess what, bro? I get it, but the same homies that you're smoking with, the same homies that you're doing business plans with, the same homies that you're studying and trying to pass classes with, or whatever you're doing, matriculating through the world, you should have brought one more brother with you, right? And even if you did, shit, go get 2 more, right? Just drop their ass off till they get the voter sticker and come back. And I see that too. Everybody, I voted. It's great. But then those brothers that are still on the fence, I understand it because I think they need something to believe in that you don't believe in, or you believe in that they don't believe in yet. And it's got to be more than student loans. It's got to be more than the woman's right to choose, even though we support our sisters. It's more of a fact of, I'm going through what I'm going through, but I don't believe in what you believe in right now. And I need you to help me understand. But we need to do a better job as those 59%, even though they only 6,000, 7,000 brothers, right? Of those 7,000 brothers on the Republican side who get it, whatever they bought into, not even the Trump side again, or however, they kind of get the importance of, they don't have to teach them as much. The problem is it's not enough of them, right? And if it was, it would be a strong voting block to say, hey, you need to discuss more issues about Black men, entrepreneurial, whatever. I just don't believe that telling folks you're going to give them up to $20,000 or $1 million for a business is the best thing to do, especially when you have Black folks who are out here getting it out the mud. What are you going to give to these people? And that's another issue, like even for student loans. Personally, again, if first time here, whatever, I personally believe that student loans are like an elitist, student loan debt relief is like an elitist viewpoint, because not everybody went to college, not everybody took on student loan debt. And if you're not willing to take off the debt for somebody who went to a trade school to learn HVAC or learn how to run their own business, whether it's inflatable, y'all know the inflatable shits at the birthday parties. Like if you're doing that, whatever, right? If you found a way to live as a plumber, whatever, and you didn't take on student loan debt, what debt are you going to take off for me? Is it medical? Is it like credit card debt? Are you going to make sure that 2 late payments don't fuck me up for the rest of my life for 7 years? Like how do you going to help me get through that, because there's a part of the issue. You're talking about everything that matters to the main voting block, but if you want me to vote, you got to tell me something that made me want to go vote, right? I told some brother earlier, it's like trying to holler at somebody. You can't try to get married or attract somebody if you're not engaging with them. And I'm not talking about, hey, first date, let's get married. I mean, like, hey, let me get to know you. Like, let me listen. And it goes back to the barbershop conversation. If you're showing up to the barbershop and you're just preaching to get a photo op, oh yeah, we understand. You didn't even hear shit from the regular person. And that's the problem. There's such a big disconnect between reality and what people with narratives, bullshit they put out here, and what's happening. That it's like, you know what? Why should I vote? See brothers on streaming and shit, making $1 million, changing their life. Like I said yesterday, becoming NBA young boys, never broke again. Why am I going to go back? For what it is. Free Thugger. He out now. But anyway, let's back to the content. North Carolina, among these women who've cast ballots, again, salute to the ladies. We know the ladies going to vote. And I love to see it, because they're, I think, voting 87, 90+% supporting their sister in this process. But then it's also a fact of some sisters are like, hey, just because you're black don't mean I'm voting for. Look at inflation. Look at jobs I'm losing. Look at everything. And I get it. I also seen somebody get the roof done the other day, and there were maybe 25 Hispanic brothers on that roof doing jobs that most Americans wouldn't do. Fact of the matter, right? They would rather have a gov tech job, a tech job somewhere, rather than doing any hard labor. It's just the reality where we are. But even then, how do you convince people? I could be my own Steve Urkel, my own Will Smith, my own Carlton Banks, my own damn Dwayne Wayne. Why should I sit here and listen to you? And if I don't even have to go to college to get the generational wealth we're talking about, what the fuck is a student loan to me? Right? You're assuming I'm poor. I'm so poor I can't get. But here's the other thing. Y'all sold student loans last election. So now you can't go say for people who still have student loans, like, hey, them brothers at ITT Tech got their student loans wiped away, and some other device schemes in the Trump University. But shit, you didn't wipe away all the student loans for people that go to HBCUs. Think about that shit. You know that HBCU students get the highest Pell Grants. They have the highest financial aid recipients, whatever it is. Y'all didn't go say, hey, fuck it. Let's take all the HBCU student loans away, because that's going to make a difference. Now y'all say, we're going to select the people that went to go be a hair tech. And guess what? Now that we've taken the hair tech student loans away, black men, we need you to come vote. Get the fuck out of here, man. That's what they're telling you. Get the fuck out of here is what they're telling you in these polls, right? 37%. You want us to vote at 40. We're not getting there right now, because guess what? You're not talking to us. You don't want to entertain. You just want to fucking leave. Isn't that what the streets say? Isn't that what the ladies say? They just want to get the draws and go. They don't want to have a committed relationship with you. You want a committed relationship with these brothers? Pause. Take them out to dinner. Pause. Go have a good time and get to know these brothers. Pause. And everything you need to know to say, hey, when you get up out of bed in the morning, pause, and you decide to go change the country, I want you to think about the roads that need to be improved, your kids' quality education, and the fact of they keep on raising these rents unless we put some damn restrictions on their ass. So I'm going to vote for somebody who's going to look out for me, right? You're not saying that shit. You're talking about some black man's plan and becoming teachers. Have you ever been in a damn classroom without the cameras? If you've been in the classroom without the cameras, let me know. Because you can see that these kids, these YNs out here in these streets, man, come on, man. They're talking about teaching taxes and the IRS in school. Man, do you know how many kids can do math? I bet you this. Half the kids that's incarcerated in DJJ, I bet a good percent of them can do better math than you right now. College educated in prison, but guess what? They just didn't have the right nurturement. They didn't have the right system. They didn't have the people who actually believed in them. And guess what? They people wasn't voting either. So now all of a sudden, people who don't believe, you want them to vote. And guess what? You're not even talking to them. Get out of here. Let's look at Georgia. That got me turned up on the stream, man. Tap in. Let's look at the great state, the peach state. I've been calling it a great state, but the peach state of Georgia. Because it's a close race. Last time I checked, I think there were up maybe 10,000 votes. Let's do a fresh reset. And I got calls. This is a midday lunch. I appreciate anybody who's tapped in and watched the stream or watched so far. But we have here voting. Early voting in Georgia as of November 1st. It's November 1st. We have 48%, almost half the voters in Georgia have voted. Early voting. Somebody commented the other day saying, Democrats don't typically early vote. Like, bro, if you don't know politics, just say that. Democrats always early vote. It's the Republicans that showing up early voting. Like, wait a minute, we knew that we'd be up like 20%, 30% going into election day. These motherfuckers say, hey, no, we're going to be even. You're going to be dead even to have a lead. You better show up. Fourth quarter. Put your fours up. It's about to be game time. 3.6 million people have cast a ballot in the state of Georgia so far. Where are we at? Let's look at individual demographics here. Political party. Parties by description. And we see that Democrats are still up in Georgia. Now, this is, what's that? Ooh, 41%. Almost 2%. Democrats are showing up in Georgia. I didn't believe it. I believe it today. Okay? Democrats are up. But we're going to look at these black men real soon. But let's break it down by ethnicity first. Overall ethnicity. 2 million Republicans, 1 million Democrats, roughly African Americans, roughly 28%. Some unknowns and others. Let's see who these unknowns and others are in the the peach state of Georgia. I keep calling it again. They are some Native Americans, some Arabs, some Russians, some Persians, some Pakistani, Armenian. Let's see if this Arab community still would break the same as they did in North Carolina. No, they're breaking Democrat, 19% Republican, 43% MPA, who just don't believe in the party. And I get that. So it can come down to, let's say, oh, we lost Georgia by, I don't want to pick it. Let me not, because that can be offensive, right? But the same way they start talking about black men, they're not going to say Arab men or Native American men and anybody else, right? They're going to put it on black men. And that's the narrative I just hate. And it's not to be any way racially focused, anything like that. It's like, why can't it just be on all people? We all need to show up to vote. Why gotta be? It's down to black men voting against Kamala Harris and voting for Donald Trump. Which makes, let me get some water before I choke out like I did the other day. All right? Pause. But better safe than sorry. Since we live streaming. Oh shit. I got a call. Call his brother back in a second too. We can wrap this up in a second. Let's look at like the African American. 1 million voters. We're going to get there. We got a lot of business dealing before 1 o'clock to happen. We got to get this streaming because guess what? We need the content. Go ahead and subscribe, whether you're on Twitch, YouTube right now, for what it is. We'll chop this up into bits and pieces of content. But right now among black voters, black men are voting at 38%, 390,000. Female voters are roughly 62%. There, 636,000 voters in the state of Georgia. Now, that is great. Again, black men typically vote in the state of Georgia. Sorry, hit the table there. Black men typically vote in the state of Georgia at 37%, right? 37% means that that's the base of the past 4 presidential election years. So if we're voting at 38%, as we see here, this 38% means that we're voting 1 point over. Again, go tell these henchmen, these political surrogates that say, hey, black men not voting, black men voting for Trump, that we're actually showing up and voting for Kamala Harris by the numbers, right? That's what I'm saying by the data. I don't know how they voted. But if you go by the polls and you take an equivalent of the polls, say, you know what? Most polls say 74, 75% of black men, maybe 80%. I've seen some polls say 80% of black men are going to vote with Kamala Harris. Maybe 7 undecided. And there's a balance of 10 that's going to vote against. All right, cool. Guess what? We already understand that some Republican brothers, maybe 6, 7%, maybe 2, and they'll be balanced. But as we get into the numbers, these 390,000 brothers here by party, not to fit the narrative, just to make it make sense. There's 17,000 brothers in the state of Georgia out of 373,000. It is Hotline Bling over here right now on the stream. Out of 373,000 men who've actually voted. Give them 20,000, 30,000 votes here. They're still outnumbered by 300,000 men in the state of Georgia. That's why the narrative doesn't make sense. I read one, I think, in the Atlantic this morning before the stream. why black men are voting for Trump. Where these 20,000 niggas at? Sorry, where these 20,000 brothers at? Tell me, right? Because the only thing they're doing, I'm telling you what they're not saying. The only thing they're doing is voting more than every female out here at a smaller percentage of the entire block. Guess what? They're voting, well, Georgia was 50% yesterday, excuse me, correction. 49%, 48% is still higher than the 37% black men typically vote at. So guess what? These brothers in Georgia, like the ones in North Carolina and the ones in Florida, are voting more than typically other brothers. So they get a fact of, well, I understand the importance of voting. Not just because of Byron Donalds, Donald Trump shit. They just vote more typically, right? But they're a smaller portion of this entire electorate. So give them 20,000 more voters. Guess what? Give them 100,000 more. Guess what? They still going to be down by at least 200,000 to 100,000. 2 to 1. But they're not even getting that 2 to 1. They're getting like 3,000, 30,000 to 1. What are we talking about? That's not even that's off the head. Anyway, but this is, of these 17,000 brothers, again, I feel that there are enough European and Hispanic deflectors from the Republican Party to offset these 17,000 brothers in the state of Georgia. But guess what? Even if these 17,000 brothers voted against her, let's get back to this, because I got some calls to return, and it is lunchtime and business time. We got to chase these checks. It is Friday, right? Everybody trying to get paid, feed their families, get where they need to go vote. Oh, that's Republicans we looking at? Ooh, Jesus. Oh, look at that red Georgia. It don't look. It used to look that way. 80s, 90s, it wasn't a speck. People who voted, right? Nope. The Friday before Election Day, if we zoom out, that's how the state looks. If this holds constant, 56 to 43. Some people can say, you know what, hey, there's still a lot of election day shoppers, election day voters out there to go get, right? There's still a lot of them to go get. Because it's 3.6 million. If this is, what was this again? Hold on. A little tangent. If there are roughly 48% of voters left to go get, that 380,000 more, 3.8 million more to go after, right? So that means there's a lot of room in the next few days to engage voters, even when early voting closes. But what we see here is early trends tell me Democrats trying to take this state over. They almost up 2 points, 1.9 points. That's based on today's Friday. If you're seeing this based on Friday, we'll see how Saturday goes. But if Saturday pops off, actually souls to the poll Sunday, right? If they're up 3-4 points going into Election Day, that'll tell the Republicans how much they need to show up on Election Day. But it's like, you know what, how many votes we have left? But it's a tight race. Because again, if you give these brothers 17,000, 20,000 votes, they still down. But these MPAs, they need to hold that trend needs to hold true too. So I don't know where you give your 60-40 or 70-32 here, where it's like, you know what, I feel 70% of the MPAs are going to vote with Donald Trump, or 30% with 7% with Kamala. At the end of the day, we got 4 days, and it's close in 2 swing states. I'm going to wrap this stream up because, as you've seen, I got some calls to make. We got some money to make. And, I'm back to mixing windows here. Either way, I appreciate y'all tapping in the stream. If anything, please subscribe to the channel. I'll make sure I cut this up, chop it up, and drop it on the YouTube channel, HipHopLobbyist. And appreciate you. I'm out.